Hi, this is Margaret Byrd and welcome to Color Quest and welcome to our current quest for the colors of the rainbow. We have been looking at how to achieve the different colors of Roy G. Biv over the past few weeks, and today we're going to stop off at the I in Roy G. Biv, and that is indigo. I'm going to simply be dyeing the same wool, silk, and cotton pieces using a Japanese produced indigo that has been specially processed to be water soluble. It's called Aijozome. As you might imagine, blue is very rare, and we are very lucky when we have an opportunity to work with indigo, and especially with something so simple as this particular version. So let's get right in and start seeing what kind of beautiful blues this wonderful water-soluble indigo will bring to us in our dye studio. So if you've been following along in this journey, you know that last week we used this same indigo to overdye weld and achieve a really lovely green. Today, I just want to look to see what kinds of blue this particular indigo will bring to us. I know from my own practice that the blue of the Aijozome is much lighter than a traditional vat style indigo, but the blue is absolutely stunning in its own right. As you may know, indigo likes to be multiply dipped in order to build up deeper colors. So I have prepared 3 different pieces of fiber in order to try 3 different dips. So we will work on building to see how deep of a blue we can get with this indigo. In keeping with our rainbow quest right now, we have been dyeing with silk, cotton, and wool. So I'm going to use exactly the same pieces in today's video. As with all fibers, we need to start with clean fiber. So I'm going to wash the fibers simply by using a gentle dish soap and heating it on the stove in a dye pot for about 30 minutes. Once that fiber is clean, I will rinse it. Now, typically I would step into a second step after that. I know you know what that is, and that is a mordant treatment. Now, when working with indigo, we don't actually need a mordant because indigo itself has a binding quality within the plant. Today, however, I am going to add a mordant step, and that is because I'm going to be using this same indigo dyed fiber for a future video. And for that video, it's going to need some mordant help. But know that if you're working with indigo, you do not need to mordant your fiber, but you still need to wash it. So let's get to that now, getting it nice and clean, and then we can throw it in a mordant bath really quickly. We'll use an alum solution, and then we can start working with Aijozome. Just a quick note about mordants. You can go to my video library and find a playlist that's all about mordants. There are different kinds of mordants that we use in different situations and for different fibers. I'm going to be using alum because I am only going to be mordanting the silk and wool, I have some cotton that's already been pre-treated with aluminum acetate, which is a more refined version of alum that is really great for cellulose fibers like cotton. Since that's already done, I'm going to be doing the wool and the silk. I'm going to do what's known as a cold soak. I will heat my alum up, and then I will take it off the stove, put my fibers in, and just let it soak for an hour or two. That is a great way to save on energy and not be working over the stovetop. So definitely worth trying. And again, I'm going to emphasize, you don't have to do this if you're working simply with indigo. But since I'm planning to use these for something else, might as well put that mordant on there now. If anything, it's just going to add a little extra binding power to this fiber for the indigo, but it's absolutely not necessary if that's all you're using. Indigo is an amazing natural binding dye itself. Another cool thing that I'm going to be doing is repurposing some alum that I've already used once before. You measure alum at approximately 10% of the weight of fiber. I have alum that I have used previously that I've just simply stored, and that's going to be my base here. It won't be exactly 10% anymore because that was measured previously, but since I have such little volume of fiber, I know it's going to be enough to give me that bond quality. So I'm going to simply pour that in, add a little additional water to the dye pot, heat that up, take it off the stove, and put my fiber in. So while that is sitting in the mordant bath, I'm going to go ahead and put my cotton piece into water. And why is that? Because we want to be able to soak it, have it nice and saturated with water so that we can remove the oxygen, and it just helps with the dye to be taken up into the fibers better if it's wet. So we will be simultaneously soaking both of those. The cotton's going simply in water to wait for its friends, silk and wool, that will be coming out of the mordant bath in about an hour, maybe two. I have purchased this particular water-soluble indigo from a company called Loop of the Loom. They import it from Japan, but you can buy it online. It comes in 2 different sizes, so you can try a smaller bottle of it if you want to test it out first before investing in the larger bag. I have a 500 gram bag that I've been using over the course of the last few dye sessions, and I still have quite a bit left, and that's because you don't need much. Now, if you go onto their site, they do provide some directions on how to work with this, and it is very simple. We are going to be working with our washed and wet fiber. We're simply going to use a tablespoon of this indigo and put it into water. We're not going to put much water in because we want just enough for our fibers to be able to move around loosely. And we're not going to be doing this on the stovetop today because they recommend that we actually massage the fiber in the dye itself to help with the bond. So we'll work in that manner today. However, we will be doing multiple dips so that we can see if we can layer up some of that indigo on top of itself and create some deeper blues. And since we're going to be using our hands to do the massaging of the fiber, we're going to be using gloves today. You are welcome to not use gloves. You will just end up with some blue hands. Up to you. Sometimes I like to do that, it's fun. Other times I need my hands to be a little clean. this is the first round. I put a piece of white silk here so you could see that it does have a blue color to it, but it's very, very light. The cotton really took it nicely. The silk, fine. I'm having that splotching going on, but I really believe that's actually the material itself since I'm having it consistently. And then the wool, which seemingly didn't take it as well as the other two. But these are the pieces that I've decided to keep out. This will be our first pass. Then these pieces are going to go back in for a second round. Then I'll take a piece out and pick one to go in for a third round. See if we can deepen these colors. I did not rinse these. The instructions say to let it dry to set to the color, but I do want to wet these before I put them back into the indigo, and I will be adding an additional tablespoon to the mix. Okay, I kneaded it for about 5 minutes and then I just let it sit here. It's been sitting for about an hour. That's a big difference. So I'm gonna just squeeze it out and hang it to dry outside and see if we got a darker shade. All right, here's the second round. You can definitely see a difference. This was the first, and this was with the second dip. Same with the silk, and also with the wool. It did take on quite a bit more. The thing that I find funny is that the cotton string, just regular cotton string, is actually taking on more of the indigo than the wool itself. So that's kind of a curious thing. And you can see it got quite a bit darker on this round. So let's go ahead and put the last bit in for a third soak and see if we can go one more shade. Well, there you have it. Success! We did it. There is the last one that I pulled out, the one with 2 dips and the single dip. So we were able to build up quite a bit of color, and we got to a pretty decent blue, pushing into the more common indigo realm. So I'm very happy with that. And what an easy way to work with indigo. So there you have a nice and easy non-vat way to work with indigo, and we were able to get much deeper colors. Now, 2 things to note. For every extra dip, I did add another full tablespoon of the Aijozome. Therefore, although I was taking away some of that color every time into the fiber, I was definitely adding more of the indigo to the same pot. So the strength of the indigo was getting stronger inside of the dye pot itself. That could have an impact for sure. The second thing is every time I put another dip in, I was using less fiber. So again, the percentage of indigo to the fiber itself was increasing. So I wouldn't expect anything less than a darker color. But in general, working with indigo, you're always going to want to work to build up those darker blues by doing multiple dips, and this is no exception. I would suggest that it may be best for you to consider using a slightly larger volume of the Aijozome in your first dip. I think if I were to do this again, I might increase it to 2 tablespoons, and also make sure that you shake the bottle, or in my instance the bag, because some of the pigment will fall to the bottom. I did notice that last tablespoon I put in seemed to be a bit thicker. Anyway, now we have these 3 beautiful blues. So next week, I want to go back along our rainbow journey to green. And this time, I would like to over dye our indigo with the yellow of weld. So the opposite of what we've done in the past. Doing different types of over dyes, as you've seen over the last few weeks, can make a big difference. And I think even choosing to do the opposite. So join me next week as we look at how green may differ if we start with indigo and over dye with the yellow of weld. Have a great week, and I can't wait to see you here next Friday. I'm going to be using aluminum potassium sulfate. I'm going to be using aluminum sulfate. I'm going to be using